ended up losing like $390,000. My biggest loss by multitudes higher. This hurt tremendously bad. Honestly, I cried that day. It was such an emotionally draining day. I was here for literally from the beginning of pre-market here at 1 a.m. Western time, Pacific time, to all the way to 5 p.m. Pacific time. I haven't eaten, I'm barely drinking, and I just took a $400,000 loss breaking almost every rule in the book. I was beat. What is going on, traders? Welcome back to the YouTube channel. My name is Kyle Williams, and in today's video, I want to talk about and pretty much do a part 2 from the previous video earlier in the year. We talked about the best and worst opportunities for me in the beginning of 2024. We're now filming this in the later end of 2024, so I want to just add on top of that, what are some of the other best and worst opportunities that have happened since that kind of first part of that video? Now, there's not going to be a perfect 3 worst, 3 best. I actually want to dive us through in the chronological order of which they happen because they actually play off each other, right? So if we jump into the first one being GME. GME here had this awesome run from 18 all the way up to about 64, 65. And that is because Roaring Kitty finally came back on Twitter, on YouTube, and we'll talk about that later in this video. But after being pretty much dormant and silent for years, came back with I guess vengeance. Like everyone had muscle memory. Immediately when he came back, started tweeting, GME gapped up from 18 all the way up to 26, traded kind of actually morning spiked all the way up to 37, but then eventually found a base in the high 20s, low 30s. And that is when I decided, you know what, he is back, he is here. This run is not over by any means necessary, and I'm going to actually take this long overnight. I actually made more money long on GME from this entire, May and June entire volatility than short, which is unlike me. Typically, I would make more money shorting it, but I actually made more money longing it. So if we look at the intraday chart for GME here, this is the morning spike I was referring to. It opened up around 26, 25 and immediately spiked to 37, 38. I was not part of this at all. I almost didn't even see it, right? I knew the Roaring Kitty and GME hype was back, but again, I have other plays, I'm watching other things. I'm not the kind of guy who's going to chase a morning spike like this. But it did pull back, I let it do its thing. I mean, you notice this base here, it started basing at 27, double bottom at 27, then a higher high at 28, and then a double bottom at 28 into the close. And I thought to myself, the hype's here. Like, Roaring Kitty's back. There's plenty of people like me who maybe missed the first spike and still want to join in on the fun. So I literally bought right into the close here around like $30 a share, risking this 28 kind of double bottom from midday and late day, and said, I want to take this overnight. I have no idea how high it's going to go, but I want to risk it overnight and take this trade because I think the momentum and the news of, Roaring Kitty coming back is going to spread like wildfire. And what do you know, by after hours, it already had gone up from 30 to 37, took it all overnight. And I knew GME was going to start trading at 4 a.m. Eastern time, which for me on the West Coast is 1 a.m. Pacific time. Sorry, there's no way in hell, pardon my French, that I am going to wake up that early. I, in fact, actually woke up at 1 a.m. Eastern for a single minute, 1 minute to place my sell orders, and then went back to bed, and then came back to finding out all my orders got filled. So I woke up at 1 a.m. for 1 minute, like I said, sold maybe 20% of my shares at 41, and then put a bunch of my share sells at 48, 55, 59, 60, 66. I think the highest I ever sold was in the 60s. I never really got any orders at 70, maybe 72 if I remember correctly. And so lo and behold, I wake up my normal time, which is 5:30, 5 o'clock Pacific time, to see that all of my orders got filled. And I ended up making 36 grand on this trade. It's very rare I make that much money on the long side, so this was a super, super solid, good long trade overnight. And again, my orders literally filled in my sleep. It's one of those rare occasions that actually happened. And again, that's why I also sold, a quarter of my position or a fifth of my position right immediately when pre-market started trading, because in the event on the opposite side where I sold a little bit and then I get back to my desk and maybe negative news came out, maybe Roaring Kitty came out and said, yeah, I'm not actually long GME, who knows what bad news could have happened. It could have died and I would have given back all my profits, so I did want to lock in some in the beginning, but it did work. Like I mentioned, all my orders did fill into this morning spike. So that was the long side of GME. Now, immediately into the market open is the short trade I took. As you notice, it had some kind of, I don't know if it was negative news here on this pullback, but clearly this was the first sign of weakness for me that this wasn't going to go higher per se, at least good odds it wasn't going to go higher. I had a perfect double top right around 79, 80 bucks. Again, pulled back down to about 46, a lot of wicks down here. And then out the open, immediate weakness from about 70 down to the 60s, and then immediate flush down to about 45. I had a starter position on at about 40 or 60, 64-ish here, but never really had full size. Again, as a trader, it's easy to say in hindsight that I was like, I knew it was going to drop. But again, this thing could have spiked back to 80. Do I really want to be short from 65 if it goes to 80? No, I don't. So I had just a starter on, it pulled back. I realized, wow, okay, this is actually going to downtrend. Then the trend is now on the short side is going to be working in my favor. Immediately covered it then in the 40s, started reshorting and the 56s, then covered again in the 48s. I actually titled the picture of this trade. When I take screenshots of my trades, I like to kind of title them. So I remember what I did here. I actually titled this ticker farming because I literally just farmed it back and forth. Short, covered, short, covered, short, covered. Did it again as we spiked back into 54, covered again into back sub 50. Then as we can see here, where there's this really nice sideways price action, you'll also notice volume is getting lower than from the morning. That's usually a bearish sign for me. That's something that is not a sign of strength any which way whatsoever. And so I started getting short again at around 50, risking this 52, 53 spike. And then we rolled over into the mid and low 40s and eventually even to the high 30s. I don't think I actually made it that far. I remember definitely covering some, if not all of it, in the low 40s, 41, 42. And then once again, shorted some more at the mid 40s after it started bouncing, covered again in the low 40s or at 40 on the pullback. Once again, shorted again at 50 or 49, 48. And then covered again into like 42, 43. So again, back and forth. All day long, I was ping-ponging this thing back and forth, back and forth. Ultimately ended up making another like 30 grand or so on this. So between the long and the short, we were up like 60 grand on this ticker alone, okay? The next ticker was AMC. If you remember Roaring Kitty's kind of heyday back in 2021, AMC and a bunch of other kind of like meme stocks, as we began to call them, ran with GME. AMC was the immediate beneficiary of GME back in May. Now, I did not take this one long. Actually, no, for correction, I did. However, it was not nearly as much as big of a gain. Again, this only gapped up from 5 to 12. Again, I was hoping it was going to go to 20, 30 like it did last time. Again, GME had way more range than AMC did. But nonetheless, I made a few grand on this long overnight. But really where I made more money was the short. So this intraday chart of AMC is the exact same day that GME spiked and gapped up to, 80, 70, 60. Again, didn't go as high as GME, didn't have as much range as GME, but AMC still offered a lot of opportunity. Like I said, didn't make much money on the long, or not as much as I would have liked. However, the short was just as good as the GME short. Very similar. In fact, I actually covered this a bit early than GME. Again, GME, like I mentioned, I read it really well, ping-ponging it back and forth. AMC, I had more of I don't want to say swing approach, but a more uglier viewpoint, if you so to speak. I thought AMC was going to offer much more to the downside, and it offered even more than that. I ended up covering pretty early, got short around 11, around the market open here, did cover a little bit around 9, added back some short into the 10s, especially after really double topped here at like 1050, this mid 10s here. Really good spot because you see VWAP here, can never hold convincingly over VWAP for more than a minute or two at most. Even failed it one more time here at like 11 a.m. before really dying. Eventually I covered all my shares, I think around like high 7s, thinking I nailed it, right? I mean, another 30K on the day, put me up around just over like 101 grand on the day between all these trades here, only to see AMC drop another like $1.50 a share down to sub $6. I mean, I left another 20, 30 grand on the table. So that was a bit frustrating. Again, did not theoretically in hindsight trade it as well as I did on GME, but nonetheless, again, I made 100 grand that day. It was an awesome, awesome day. This is where the ugly part comes in. As I reflected on the day, making 100 grand, again, beautiful day, right? I'm never going to be upset about making 100 grand. What I was and ended up getting upset about was the fact that I started comparing my performance that day to what I did in 2021 with the same meme stocks, which is in that week, I think I had at least not one, but like 2 six-figure days. And I finished up that week well over $250,000, right? And I couldn't help but start really judging and criticizing myself almost too far, where I thought to myself, I made 100 grand, but I could have made more. And it wasn't enough. It was like almost like a point system, right? We're not talking real world money here, because again, no one's, including myself, is not going to complain about 100 grand. But I started just comparing a scoreboard, right? Oh, Kyle in 2021 did $250,000. But Kyle in 2024 only did 100. Like, what's wrong with him? Why is he not better? And so that really built a level of frustration in me that ended up taking it on the wrong stock, which brings us to the worst opportunity. Really, it was the best. It was the worst mismanaged and traded by my part, which was FFIE. FFIE here is a stock that literally went from 4 cents to about $4. Now, this is post reverse split. So they did I think a 40 to 1 reverse split, somewhere in there. Correct me if I'm wrong, those numbers are off. But the point is, it was never at $150 a share when I look at my chart here. This high was around like 380, 390. Okay. Nonetheless, on May 15th, so a couple days later from the GME AMC run, I got short and I got short big. So the intraday chart here, actually we'll zoom into pre-market. In pre-market here, like the GME trade where I said I never wake up early and I woke up for 1 minute to place my sell orders, FFIE, for whatever reason, let's chop it down to just straight FOMO. I woke up at 1 a.m. Pacific time to start trading. No joke, I woke up and stayed awake this entire time. Didn't go back to bed, didn't take a nap, literally was at my desk trading for at least 12 hours, or if not more by the end of the day, and there was really no reason to. In fact, it hurt me more than helped me. By the time, before even market open, I was already full size short this thing. Again, this thing up went from 4 cents to 80 cents at this point. I thought to myself, I didn't, execute as massively as I wanted to on AMC or GME, but this one here, this is my makeup play, right? This is the, I wouldn't call it revenge trading, but this was like, this is the play that's going to make up for lost gains, right? Just this silly story I was telling myself. And so out the open, it pulls from 80 cents to about 75, 76, holds it beautifully, doesn't even test the pre-market lows by any means, and then comes back. And my risk really should have been 90 cents. I was risking pretty much $1, but over 90 cents, I was already over my max stop. That's how big of size I had. And for me, I was just so convinced and convicted that I was going to be right and that this was going to die because of just how crappy I thought this ticker was long term. But the problem is long term doesn't mean right now. And I got that too mixed up. I got too convicted. And so as you know here, it then goes over $1 and I don't cut it. It then pulls back below $1. I said, okay, great. I didn't respect my stop loss. I didn't respect, my trading rules, but I got bailed out just now. Let's stay in the trade. Of course, that's not what happened. It came back into the ones and then started breaking over 120. And then I said, okay, I need to get the hell out. Otherwise, I'm going to lose way more than I should. Ended up cutting it for, $150,000 loss, well over triple what it should have been, right? And at that point, I usually have the discipline to stop and to say, hey, you broke your rules, you cut we're well beyond what you're willing to lose. You just need to take a chill pill and end for the day. That's where things got even worse. And I said, no, I'm going to try again. The famous last words. And I got short again in the low ones, thinking, okay, you know what? It blew off everyone. Everyone who got short, like myself, got covered into the 120s. Now it's time for it to actually roll over back sub 1 and then go back to the 80s, 70s, 60s and profit from there. As you can see in the chart, that is not what happened. Again, it went back over the 130s. I cut it, tried again into this parabolic, got short in the 180s, 190s, added on the backside after it blew off plus $2. And then it finally, and again, this is the battle I'm playing myself. Then it really dies. I'm like, okay, it just dropped from 220 down to 120. That's the biggest pullback it's ever had. That's got to be the top. I'm willing to swing at all costs to then take it to the next day and then cover back down. Still, this is my brain, 80, 70, 60 cents, right? I just had this conviction of this is going to get crushed. And then you notice, as we go into after hours here, it's kind of trading in this range between the 120s, 130s, and 180s. Then we get into after hours as the day ends, and it starts crawling back, almost to the point now where we close after hours, where by after hours, it crawls back to the 190s. And again, my average at this point is the 180s, maybe 190 best case, and I realize, crap, I just was up at almost $1 a share, 70, 80 cents a share, and now I'm break even going into the next day. I'm down at this point well over $200,000 or $300,000. I'm like, I can't take this risk. And that's the one blessing here, is that as much as I fight, as many rules as I break, there is eventually a give up point. There is eventually I'm calling for mercy and uncle. And this was it, where I was like, I can't take this overnight, no matter how much I want to make this money back or make my losses back. I can't afford to take this overnight because I have no idea what's going to happen. And frankly, it looks way too good on the long side for me to be short. So I did cover all of my shares and got flat. Ended up losing $390,000. My biggest loss by multitudes higher. And I look back, it's okay, everything's fine because I've recovered those losses. It's months later since this has happened, but in the moment, this hurt tremendously bad. Honestly, I cried that day. It was such an emotionally draining day because again, you gotta remember, I was here for literally from the beginning of pre-market here at 1 a.m. Western time, Pacific time, to all the way till 4 p.m. or 5 p.m. Western time, Pacific time. So what is that? Literally 15 hours. I haven't eaten, I'm barely drinking, and I just took a $400,000 loss breaking almost every rule in the book. I was beat. The best part about this though is that because I called uncle, because I said mercy, I avoided an even bigger loss. If you go to the next day, again, it closed after hours at 190. It ends up gapping up to 250 over those highs. Literally the 120 parabolic that we saw in that previous chart, it is now gapping up over that level. For me, forget a $390,000 loss. If I had stayed stubborn and held this overnight, this would have been over $500,000, maybe $600,000-700,000. It would have been way worse than it already was. And not only that, it then opened at what, 270, 280, pulled back, made it look like it was dying, and then made its way up to $390, almost $4. At this point, when it was in the high threes, I thought this is going to $7. Like, this is such a black swan move. This is crazy. And all of a sudden, it just gets clobbered. Just starts getting absolutely destroyed, pulling back from the mid threes all the way down to $1, even 70 cents by after hours. So again, that thesis, that stubbornness that I had to wanting to like let it die and then go back to 70, 80 cents, like so funny looking in hindsight, it worked. It happened. My timing was just so terribly off, and my sizing and position sizing and rule following was so terribly off that I left this entire 2-day sequence with being down well over multi-six figures. Now, this is where the actual best opportunity of this second half comes in, because even though, yes, I lost way too much on FFIE, my biggest gift and problem is that I'm always willing to give a ticker one more shot. Right? You clearly saw that on the losses of FIE, but now that I wasn't short, I saw it die. I wasn't tilted anyway, but I had a refresh. I said, okay, this is the right timing. I was so off on the front side. Now this is clearly the backside, going from $3, $4 down to $1. Like, the odds of this recovering now are so slim and small that this is the time to be short. This is the time to attack it. And so I actually remember putting on a small short in the like 220s into this bounce area here. If we look at this pullback into this big bounce, and then actually start a swing short. And so if we go into like the daily chart, for the next few days, this just downtrends. And almost every day I'm adding to a swing idea here. Ultimately, they ended up releasing their earnings, saying that their amount of shares authorized 10x'd from 40 million to 400 million, essentially having a gap down from pre-reverse split from like $1 to like 70, 80 cents, and then got crushed to like 50 cents. So what once was, again, one of my biggest losses on the year quickly turned into one of the biggest gains. Eventually, a couple days later, as it bounced, I realized I shouldn't be in it any longer. I covered it for about $170,000 gain. So again, not nearly enough to make up from the loss by any means, but it felt good to know the timing was correct once it was actually backside. So although I lost too much on the front side, the gain on the backside was how much I thought I should have and could have would have made. It doesn't make up for the loss, but I can't help but look back and I'm like, okay, as terrible as I screwed up, at least I made it somewhat better. Again, not back to normal, but my trading didn't just go downhill from there. I didn't become a train wreck, right? I was still in it. I was still trading well, and it resulted in a very, very big gain. Now, on to the next ticker, back to GME. Now, we've had those losses. I took those losses on FFIE. Now we come into June, and this is when Roaring Kitty comes back again and says, hey, I'm going to go live on YouTube for the first time in years. Hasn't done it since 2021 and is tired of tweeting about GME and posting memes. He's like, I'm going to show my face. And you think this shouldn't be a big deal. Like, oh, I'd be like, in my opinion, I was like, duh, that's going to happen. Like, of course he's like, why wouldn't he? But again, that was resulting in an excuse for Redditors, Wall Street Bets to buy it up again. So it literally went from 26 here from early June all the way up to 47. I again took it long in the 30s and sold it into the like 40s or 50s. Unfortunately, it did not go higher back into the 60s or 70s. In fact, GME on this day, on the 7th of June, put out earnings and then did an offering. So that's why you see it actually gapping down quite big. I actually sold into this sell-off when they announced that offering and that earnings, because I'm just not going to give my gains back away on the long side. But I did make another 30K on the long side. So again, that's why I mentioned earlier this video, I actually made more money on the long side here than the short. Made 30 grand, like we talked about earlier in this video, on the first time, and 30 grand again on the second time. So about 60K plus long, and didn't actually make any money short on this backside. I didn't want to chase. I knew it had this morning spike, but I actually was traveling through Europe at this time. I actually sold my long from my phone while I was in Florence. So I did not have the bandwidth to then flip from long to short and then profit. So I actually missed this opportunity, which kind of sucks. But again, that's life. I don't regret seeing Florence and seeing the city. So it happened. But yeah, still a great opportunity on the long side. Made like 30K that day. And that's pretty much it for this year. There hasn't been a whole lot for me the next few months. Really, it was May and June that really solidified some solid opportunities. Everything else is nothing compared to these 20, 30, plus dollar or $100,000 in terms of FFIE's case gains. So yeah, those are the best and worst opportunities for this kind of second to later half of 2024. We'll see what comes around kind of holiday season, Thanksgiving, Christmas time. If I can kind of rub my crystal ball here. I think there's going to be solid opportunity. We will see. I will, of course, can do a part 3 on what else we see, maybe late 2024, early 2025. But anyways, guys, thanks so much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe. Comment down below what maybe is your best or worst opportunity that you've traded in the second half of 2024. And we'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.